Hello, and welcome to another episode of Edison TV. I'm Jyoti Prakash, Director of Healthcare at Edison. Joining us today is Sten Sörensen, CEO of Cereno Scientific. The company has reported some interesting news flow recently and announced its Q1 26 results today, which we will be discussing in more detail during this interview. Welcome, Sten.
Thank you.
So, Sten, just to kick off, 2026 has already been a very active year for Cereno, and you reported your Q1 26 results today. What would you identify as the key milestones and main takeaways from the year so far?
Well, we have seen really good progress in the start of 2026 for Cereno. And obviously, the key milestone that we're looking ahead to kick in is the start of our Phase IIb trial for our lead program, the HDAC inhibitor, CS1 in PH, the rare disease, pulmonary arterial hypertension. And we're targeting that for June, so very soon. We've also seen good progress on our second HDAC program, the novel CS014, and that's a very capital efficient and fast strategy that we're implementing, and we're currently doing a study to fast forward this program to a Phase IIb trial starting next year. And of course, we have also increased the visibility of our third program, the preclinical asset CS585, into the rare disease space, and we've increased the visibility of that target. So all in all, a good progress for the company.
Great. And clearly, the biggest upcoming catalyst is the Phase IIb initiation for CS1. You mentioned that the trial is expected to commence in June. But what are the key remaining steps ahead of initiation for you?
Well, we started the year by communicating that we have a fantastic gravity into our program from the top thought leaders in the space in PH and in cardiology. So we announced a clinical steering committee consisting of Mark Humbert, Sandeep Sai, and others, including Deepak Bath, the cardiologist running Mount Sinai. So we have a very good leadership of our program, and Professor Mark Humbert is also the chairman of this steering committee. So that was the start. We also moved on our patient-centric approach and made an agreement and alignment with PH Europe Global for the input into the steering committee, Hal Skore, who is a long surviving PH patient actually and very active in that organization. And we believe very much in a patient-centric approach. So provision of thoughts into our clinical program, and then also awareness and possibly improved patient recruitment through that collaboration. So very happy with that. Of course, we are operatively very intense period with our CRO partner, a leading actor in the field of PH. And it's intense work in relation to getting everything aligned. So a lot going on with that program.
Moving on to your second asset, CS014, and this was recently repositioned towards PH-ILD. And you also mentioned recently there was an announcement that the PK bridging study has been initiated. Now, can you just walk us through the study design and also explain how this will help de-risk the pathway towards the planned Phase IIb study, which is expected to start in early 2027?
Yes, so normally when you have pursued and gotten your preclinical package in order, you submit an IND or similar to the authority where you pursue your first Phase I study, which we have done in Sweden with CS014 in Uppsala, where we've done many studies. But then when you want to move on from that, you align with the proper regulatory authority. We did so initially with FDA. And we got feedback that if we pursue the bridging study relative to the old molecule VPA that's been in man for 60 years in various dosages, and so much is known about the concentration in the human body, etc. So if we did a bridging study versus that with our new asset, which is actually a modified version of VPA, we could move straight for a phase IIb trial rather that what you usually do, a phase IIa trial. So that by itself would save Cereno a fair amount of capital and a fair amount of time, up to 2 years' time, if we succeed with that trial. And the trial is actually PK/PD, so we are looking at drug exposure levels versus VPA in man. And if those are appropriate, which we believe they will be, we will avoid additional safety studies and can move directly to the phase IIb stage. So we're very happy with that. And it's a 2-dose exposure over in 14 patients over a 2-week period, if I now remember correctly.
Very useful information. Thank you, Sten. And you also have a third asset in your portfolio, CS585. And you recently selected antiphospholipid syndrome, or APS, as the lead indication for this asset. What drove you to prioritize APS as the target indication? And then what kind of commercial opportunity do you see in this indication?
Well, Yoti, as you know, Cereno Scientific is focused initially with our efforts into rare and orphan or rare disease space because we believe there is a very high unmet need in many indications there, and we could be most useful there initially. It also is a good strategy for a biotech because normally it's less capital intensive and it requires less time. So for CS585, we announced APS because it's such an indication. And we have already a long-standing research agreement with University of Michigan. We actually in-licensed CS585 from University of Michigan, and we collaborate since that deal with the inventor and Professor Mike Hollenstadt, who's active at University of Michigan. And in the work that we have done there, we have documented in a variety of vessels that CS585 is able to prevent thrombosis without increasing bleeding risk. This was covered in JTH, in editorial and podcasts, etc., about this work. So now we have increased the strategic direction and also the visibility of that by announcing APS as our target. So that's the background. Commercially, we're looking at a very large market, actually. So $18 billion and growing. So, and there isn't very good treatment there at this time. And we hope we will deliver this drug and be able to deliver a lot of value to patients and treating physicians.
That's great. And Sten, if you look at your entire portfolio, you are targeting rare, often conditions with significant unmet need. But how closely are you aligned with the regulatory authorities on these programs?
Well, it's an interesting question, which I actually like a lot because I've spent my career repurposing drugs into new indications. So this is the third or fourth time, actually. I did it initially with MR antagonists in heart failure in the mid-90s, and then moved on to do it with beta blockers in the mid-90s, and they both increased survival with more than 30% in heart failure and quality of life, published in New England Journal of Medicine. And when I met Cereno, I had a gut feeling that this could be another time where actually HDAC inhibition could be repurposed in to new indications such as cardio and pulmonary diseases. And we believe that Cereno is pioneering that effort with our programs. And interestingly, in Lancet Respiratory, both FDA and our chairman of our steering committee published with other thought leaders that if you want to pursue pulmonary arterial hypertension, you should design your trials in a way to look at prognostic impact, to look at function, and to look at quality of life. So, and that's exactly what we're doing with our trials. So we have aligned it with FDA. We have actually the chairman and also author of that program is well aligned with Cereno, of course. And we also obtained a fast track designation by FDA last September. So CS1 is very much aligned. Our repurposing effort, actually recently FDA made a public call to investors, pharma, and thought leaders to look for indications or repurposing mode of action agents that are being used for something today and could be useful in new indications. And I've been doing it most of my life, and we are doing it at Cereno. So very much aligned on that one too.
Stan, just moving on to the next question, and we've seen that Cereno has become highly active at international scientific and investor conferences more recently. So, what kind of interest are you seeing from potential pharma partners? And following up from that, what type of collaborations would be most strategically relevant for Cereno at this stage?
Well, we have, we are very happy that our efforts are being acknowledged by various parts of the sector. When it comes to specifically partnering and pharma, we have been very active since 2 years, 1.5 years, I would say. And so we are present at things like JP Morgan, Bio Europe. This year, I was active in Tokyo, Bio Nordic event in Tokyo, and then on to Bio China in Shanghai. And we see a lot of interest around what we do. We believe we are in a sweet spot for interest, and that actually coincides with the appetite increasing by pharma, both global, regional, or local players, I would say. So a clinical mid to late stage program, rare disease space, first mover, repeatable biology into multiple indication possible. That's something that pharma is looking for. We are in several discussions and contacts with various players, local players in Japan, for instance, regional players in Europe, which have been quite active actually recently, and also global players. So let's see what will come out of that. Those relationships are normally not short before a deal is made. So, but we are on our way. I would say also that when it comes to a deal, we are looking at all three: local, regional, and global. And I wouldn't rule out any of those, but they have to fit with Cereno's ambitions here. So let's see where we end up. We're happy for the interest in the company.
That's great, and all the best for these discussions, Sten. And just to wrap up, as we progress through 2026, what can investors look forward in the coming months from Cereno?
So we have, of course, the first patient in our global Phase IIb program in the rare disease PH, and that's expected, targeted for June. We really hope we can keep that target, and that's a US site. And then we have the analysis of our extended access program for CS1, looking at if we can see anything in a quite small number of patients on the efficacy side. We also have a sub-study in that in collaboration with Fluida, looking at structures of the lung vessels. So that's coming out, also targeted for June. What else is that we are doing the bridging study, communicated yesterday, that we have the first patient in. So that's a little later. We conclude that in mid summer, sometime in the mid-year, and then results coming out just after the summer. And then we are moving with CSO14 to apply for an IND in PH-ILD, the rare disease, lung disease, or and hope to get that accepted by regulatory authorities within the year. And then we will have 2 programs in Phase IIb, actually, one ready to start, if you will. So that's really what those are some really key milestones for the company, and I hope investors will enjoy them.
That's great, and lots going on and lots to look forward to as well. Thank you, Stan, for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Jyoti. Appreciate it, and have a good day.
Thank you.